likes of Manchester United, Middlesbrough, Wales, among a host of other teams. So without wasting much time, I would like to first thank Clayton for coming on the show. Thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank
And I
you.
would like to begin by asking you, how are you and how has this period been for you? Where it is kind of uncertain, like what's going to happen next.
Well, I think it's the same for everybody. Well, most people, it's crazy at the moment. It's getting a bit like I've got three kids. I started late with my family, so there's five of us, and you're always getting in each other's way a lot. Obviously, now we're schooling from home, which is a big problem. That's the worst thing, the school because the schools are off. We're having to teach the kids from home.
Definitely. And like, this is something like which has not like this kind of an era has not happened like where you had to be behind closed doors all over the world. So like when you look back, like if you were still playing right now, how would you have dealt with this? Or would it have been something challenging for you? Yes, it would be like in
Well,
terms
I
of
mean, I think
personal, but like as a professional, would it be challenging?
well when I was growing up, the I think the game's changed a lot now, and it's a lot. I mean, the reserve team is pretty much under 19 players. But when I was growing up at 16, 17, 18, I was playing with first team players in the reserves. And we'd be playing, let's say we were playing Liverpool, we'd be at Anfield and there'd be no crowd. There'd be pretty much all first team players playing because there was only one sub in them days as well. So to keep the players fit, they had the reserve, the players who were just on the fringe of the first team are always playing in the reserves. I mean, I've played 60 minutes in the first team. 3 days later, I played in the reserves to keep fit because I didn't play 90 minutes. So, I mean, it would probably be good for a lot of us playing now because there's no crowd. I mean, we were doing it then with no crowd, no TV, and it was a little bit naughtier then as well. There was a lot of naughty tackles flying about in the reserves, I could tell you.
And definitely that's like one maybe the glamour side of the game which has developed over the time. But in terms of like you touched on how the game has evolved in terms of like you, at least I personally hear like players of the previous generation saying that it has got like the game has changed a lot in terms of maybe how even as simple as a tackle being thrown in, like which you also said. In your opinion, how much of that has changed, or how much of the speed of the game has changed?
I don't think the speed of the game has changed a lot. It's not going to do that much. But what's happening now, because the pitches are so good, it's easier to control the ball. So, you're quicker with that. When we were playing, sometimes you'd have to take 2-3 touches to get the ball under control. I mean, to be fair, some of the players still do that now, but the pitches are magnificent now. There's not a blade of grass out of place. So it's a lot easier to play a passing game. So there's a lot more passing going on. I mean, I remember one year, the Old Trafford was so bad, we decided as a team to get everything from the back to the front. So every time the defence had it, they just got it up to the strikers. And then we knew the strikers weren't going to win the headers because I think it was Brian McClair and Peter Davenport, and they weren't big. So then the midfield then went and collected the knockdowns from the centre backs, and we played in their half. And I mean, you can see now you watch teams trying to play out at the wrong times, and they're causing their own problems. They're losing goals for no reason. The other team's got a full press, 3 or 4 players closing them down, and they're still trying to play out. And I'm like, it's just. I think the thing with football. I mean, I coached for about 8 or 9 years at United, and what I saw with the coaching. I mean, I used to join in with the training and try and teach them and show them. I like to show players what we expect them to do. And the coaching was like there was no key things like man for man marking, and set plays. Set plays now, anybody could score a goal because if you just get the perfect ball in, there's nobody to block your run. There's a few teams doing it, but not many. They all just stand in a line on the penalty box, and it's like a free for all. You put a good ball in, and it's the first one to it. But again, the usual thing with the old-fashioned way of playing 2 up front. I think 2 up front's still the best system because I know from years of playing, and I played centre back. Centre back's a doddle, and if you can read the game, the only thing I've got a problem with is physicality because I'm only 5'8". So playing against a big striker, I'd struggle. But defenders don't have to run in a game. Centre backs very rarely. The hardest run they've got is running back after they've been up for a corner. And it is, and so they lose their fitness through they'll get fitter at the start of the season, but when the games start, they'll be less and less fitter through through that period of the season. And you need to. That's where they make mistakes. If you play two up front, then they've got a man mark two players, and they're usually the best players because they're the ones getting paid the most, and it's very difficult for them.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you on that note, like we generally say like there's generally a conception that like defenders and goalkeepers have to play out from the back much more these days compared to the previous time. Is it just something that is thrown out? Because even back then you had to pass out from the back, irrespective of, you can't just play long. Was it something that is just being thrown on right now, or has it actually evolved to the stage that it is being more seen
It's
on?
evolved in the last 10 years. In the last 10 years, it's evolved pretty much because of Barcelona, probably. I think Barcelona, they were dominating the game with Xavi, Iniesta, and then the front three were the best in the world. So, but I mean, you're talking about probably the six best players in the world playing. So it's a different. I mean, I watched this doing it at Man United, where we're trying to get the kids to do the same thing, and we're now putting pressure on 15, 16-year-olds to play out exactly the same way as the top players in the world do. And we're not giving them the option that when they're being closed down, you have to play it forward. And I saw that time and time again, and I'm like, wow, you're just putting loads of pressure on the kids. And it's, for me, I'd be going mad. Some of the things I've seen in the last couple of years as a manager, I'd be like, what are you doing? To like a goalkeeper playing the ball out, and the opposition have got 3 or 4 players around the edge of our box. No, if you hit it forward, you've already taken 4 of their players out of the game. And if you clear the midfield, you're now onto their back 4 or the back 2. So sometimes, but what we always used to say, if you play it long in behind the defence, then their defence will drop off. They won't want to get caught. So when they drop off the next time, then the midfield will drop off, and then you have more space to play out. Everybody wants to play out because it's easier. It's, you keep control of the ball, especially the way the pitches are. But, you have to play a longer ball so you can play the shorter ball next time. It pushes the team back. If you keep playing short balls, the team will just squeeze you, and you make it easier because they know what you're going to do.
And you touched on a very important point that I feel is like you said, like how you see kids, like being forced into play a particular brand of football. Like maybe they are good at it, or maybe they are not good. We don't know. But is it like too much pressure, or maybe just a personal preference that the coach has, which is being pushed down?
Yeah, but they don't know. The coach, I think it depends sometimes with coaches. There was a lot of coaches at United who've not played the game. So I'm like thinking, well, you don't really know what it's like when you're dropping off to get the ball and somebody's right behind you, snapping at your heels. There's a lot of pressure on you. You lose the ball, you're likely to give a goal away. So, and they were pressurizing. I saw one coach within 10 minutes give 2 goals away. I think we were playing Reading, and he's shouting at the goalkeeper, play it out, play it out, play it out. And where they were playing in, it wasn't a great pitch either. It was a very small pitch. So Reading are now, they're up on the full press. And I'm like, he plays it out to the centre back, he loses it, they score. And I'm like, wow, he's just, the coach has just put the goalkeeper under that pressure. We've lost a goal from it. And then he did it again 10 minutes later. It was like, he was trying to make him do it. And I'm like, I even said to him, you need to give him the opportunity to play longer ball. If it's not on to play short, you don't want him to play short. You're just causing problems. And I think somewhere along the line, and whoever was giving out, right, I had a feeling the Premier League, had a lot to do with some of the stuff they were coaching. And I think somewhere in the middle, they forgot to say, all right, yeah, if they've got a full press, you've got to play it long. And they weren't doing that. It was just, you've got to play out from the back. I remember going to Liverpool, and Liverpool are trying to beat us. They're not worried about playing that out from the back. And they knew exactly how we were going to play. And they just went bump. And that wasn't the coaches. The players knew how we were going to play. So they just pressed us high, and we never got into their half. And I was like, wow, that's scary. There's a massive, honestly, I remember we played it was Liverpool's training ground, and the pitch was perfect. On one side, there was not a footprint on that pitch. where in Liverpool's half, there was no footprints in there. And it was like scary. I came off thinking, wow, I'm glad I'm not playing now.
So, like, is it like fair to say like people should make peace with like maybe that there are different styles of playing football and not that one is better than the other?
Yeah. Well, there's loads of different ways. But I mean, like I say, there's always a time to play out from the back and there's always a time to play forward. You know, I mean, and again, it's the biggest thing for me with the top teams, you have to press. The pressing thing is why Liverpool have been so good. Man City have been really good as well. And they work very hard up front. The midfield work. The front six work so hard, the defence don't have to do anything. You know, they're going on about they've lost the centre-back this year, who get, you know, he's a fantastic player, Van Dijk. But if they press us as hard and work very, very hard like they did against Barcelona last year, we won't win today against Liverpool because we won't be able to handle that. We're not used to that kind of pressure of pressing. But we've improved. We're starting to do it a little bit, but we're doing it individually, and it's not good when you do that. You get picked off. You have to do it as a team. As soon as you lose it, you should be working as a group just to get that ball back. I mean, they always say it was like the Barcelona thing. They got a 6-second rule. British teams have been doing it 30 years ago, and that was just part of the game. And I think that's why in those days when we got into Europe, seven years in a row, they won the European Cup. And it was more, I can say now, it was from the pressing. The European teams won't be used to teams closing them down, pressing them up, the defence. And the defence will be like, oh, usually they're getting the ball down and looking good, spraying balls around. And all of a sudden they've got to do something with it really quickly. And they just give it away.
And you know, like you have been a coach also. So I wanted to ask, like, how easy or difficult is it to implement pressing, which you say is so
Easy.
instrumental to maybe any team how they perform in the pitch?
Very easy for me because we never worked on. I had the same conversation with a coach at United, and he says, "Well, if we're going to press, we're going to have to work on it, unless we're going to have sessions to work." And he goes, "No, you don't have sessions. You don't need to do sessions. Whoever loses the ball straight away should think I need to get that back." We used to put that into training. We used to do it in training. If you lose a ball, go and get it back. Wherever it is, go and chase it and get it back. I've watched Cavani. He's come to United. He's one of the oldest players in the league. And I watched him run from the opposition 6-yard box. And he ended up in our penalty box, chasing back because he knew how important the game was. So it's there. If you want to do it, you can do it. But, you have to. And then what we used to say was, whoever's nearest to the ball, try and get to the ball as quick as you can. Because it could be, and I remember it happened at Old Trafford in a game. Mkhitaryan, I think it was one of his first games, and we're playing City. Kolarov picks the ball up on the goal line, and Wayne Rooney's shouting at him to go and close him down. And he's like, you can see he doesn't quite know whether he should go or just stay in the midfield line. So Kolarov runs out to about the edge of the box and then pings it because he's got a great left foot. He pings it towards the halfway line. I think Bailly went up for a header. It wasn't a great effort, to be fair. He got flicked on, and De Bruyne went through on the flick and scored. But if Mkhitaryan goes and closes him, that doesn't happen. Just, purely because he's too far away to hit that ball. And that's why you need to get the player, whoever's on the ball, his head down so he doesn't know what's going on. Once his head's up and he's got time, I could still play now. I can still ping the ball, but I can't travel the distance. If somebody's closed me down quickly, I'll find it hard to get away from them or anything. And that's the difference. You have to know exactly what you're going to do with it.
Definitely. And talking of managers and implementing ideas, you were, you were at United when Sir Alex took over, and in his early tenures, there was a lot of, doubts whether he could cut it out or not. There were talks of him even getting the sack. How was that phase like as a player? Like when you look back now, you think, okay, that was a foolish moment. It was like a knee-jerk reaction, but back then it was like quite troublesome. How was the atmosphere back then? How did he turn it around?
Well, I mean, he was working on a good team. Obviously you're trying to get a team that's going to win, and it is down to the players. I think in the end, when it comes down to it, I mean, the only thing a manager could do is put you into a system that, for me, doesn't work. Like I've seen this, we've been using that system now and again, 4-2-3-1, and for me, it's one of the worst systems I've heard of. You know, for me, it's like you need to sell your two centre backs and buy two good ones in because you don't trust them. You know, football's about getting forward, scoring goals, and then working hard to get the ball back when you lose it. I mean, it's like Mourinho. He actually started it, I think, when he came into England. Makelele was the sitting midfielder. And it helped Lampard because Lampard then he knew he could go into the penalty box and he doesn't have to worry about getting back. You know, because Makelele's there, his insurance policy. But I mean, before that, we never did that. I mean, the midfielder, you try and get one in the box, a middle midfielder, and then the other one would be around the edge of the box. You know, and you get squeezed in all up the field. So you've pushed up further. I think there was more running done when we played. Because I mean, midfield. I mean, I used to come off feeling sick because I've done so much running. You know, I've run and run and run because you can't really replicate it in training how much running you have to do in a game. And Old Trafford's a very big pitch, which I don't think a lot of people realise, especially the fans and that who maybe have not been there. But it's much bigger than Anfield. It's much big. All the smaller pitches, stadiums, I mean, the pitches aren't very big. Villa Park is very similar to Old Trafford, and we get really good results there all the time, pretty much at Villa Park. But the other pitches, I get nervous because I know how tight the pitches. I've been there, I've played them myself, and I know. I mean, when we played, it was even worse because every team pressed. It wasn't like, oh, we're a bit different, we're special because we work hard and we press you. Every team pressed, and you know, it is what it is. But
And you mentioned 4-2-3-1 not being good for the defenders, where you require two insurance policies basically instead of one. And
yeah,
as a defender, which was the best formation you liked playing in?
as a defense, like I said, I've played in every position for Manchester United, and I've played pretty much everyone for Wales and a few more in Wales. That's going back to wing backs and everything, and I enjoyed every position. And the best shape for me is a 4-4-2. I mean, when the game kicks off, it's pretty much then it's a 2-4-4. You're playing two centre backs. You've got everybody else, and full backs are pushed in. The wide men are pushed up. You're more up the field. There's 8 of you in the opposition's half and the 2 centre halves. And in them days, they played 2 up front all the time. So the full back, whichever side the ball was on, the other full back had to be close enough. So if you lose the ball, he has to get back to make it a 3v1. A 3v2. So you got the 2 centre backs, 2 centre halves, and then the full back has to get back. I mean, most of the time when I played left back, I would come in front of him and I'd be like a front shield. So we'd have the 3v2. But if there's a midfielder closer to the edge of their box, I would actually go all the way in and close him down. So if the ball came out to him, I could stop him turning and, you know, the whole team having to run all the way back up the other field into the other half.
Definitely. And I was reading, like you said, you played for almost all the positions. I was reading, so I think when I was preparing the question list, you were all the jerseys number from 2 to 11 for United back then when you had the thing. So as a player, since you played in all, which was the one which you liked playing in the most, the form
position?
Position.
The weird thing was that my best ever season at the club was in one position at left back in '91 when we played Barcelona as well. At the end of the season in the Cup Winners' Cup, but I scored 9 goals as well from left back. You know, but I really enjoyed playing in the middle midfield, but it was very, very hard work. Left midfield, I found easier. On the left side as a left winger, left midfield, I could cross the ball with my left, but I used to cut inside a lot and play balls in with my right. Or you can cut inside and shoot, which is what I think Marshall's best position is. Because he's definitely not a centre forward. He's not strong enough. He's not aggressive enough. Just got
definitely. Yeah. And you moved into coaching as well. Was it something you always wanted to do, or was it something okay, I want to stay into the game?
No, well, I mean, it was a bit weird because I remember because sometimes it was on the, when you're on the bench, sometimes we talk about things. I mean, we've got the physio with us and we're looking at somebody gets a knock and we say, all right, we try to guess what the injury is, how long you'll be out. and we were doing stuff like that. And then also then what we should do with the team. And every time I come off the bench, I always wanted to impact the game or do something that was going to change the game. And quite a few times it did. And I think that's the key thing as a sub. You need to be watching the game and thinking, right, where could I play? You know, and I always remember Mark Hughes saying, you're going to be a manager one day. And it ended up he was the manager. But what it was, I kept playing until I was about 42, 43. And then I sort of missed my group. There was a block of people. I mean, I could have ended up coaching with Mark Hughes and that, but, you know, and I think the biggest thing in football, you need people at other clubs to bring you in. It's who you know, not what you know. And I think it's a bit sad with football because I know there's a lot of players who haven't got, you know, jobs, coaches. They've got A badges, they've got the pro badges, and they're trying to get jobs in England, but they just, because they don't know people, they're not getting a chance to get in there. People who maybe not be as good as not as good footballer or not as good coach as them, you know, they're getting jobs because they know people at the clubs. And it's turned into a bit more of a business place now everywhere. You know, people who, like the youth team academy manager now, they could be anybody. I mean, it's not even people who deal with football. So I think the game's changed a bit that way. And it's not, I don't think it's changed for the best.
And you know, like you also said, like you have seen many of them who have probably not played and were giving advice to a young player who is just starting out their career, and maybe that may be detrimental to the player's growth. Do you think it's important for a player for a coach to have experience in playing at least at some level so that he can be a good coach, or is it not necessary?
I think it's much better if you have them because you know what it's like than yourself. And I think that's the difference between Pep Guardiola and some of the even just some of the players like even Ollie. I mean, he's a centre forward, top centre forward, but we've always had so many top centre forward. He was off the bench a lot, and then they're more expert in striking, being a striker. So then you've got people who are midfielders. You've got to have a bit of everything. You need to know. I think if you're a midfielder all your life, you know all about the midfield, what a midfielder should be doing. But you don't really think about the centre backs. You should know what they're doing. If you played football long enough, you should know exactly what everybody does. But if you've not played, you're then like a supporter. You could take somebody. You've got people who've gone through, got the badges. I remember one time it was Dave Seaman. There's a job at Arsenal for him as the assistant manager, the first team goalkeeper coach. And I could take the job, but he couldn't because he didn't have a badge. He didn't have the same badge as I had. He's played in the World Cup finals for England as a goalkeeper. He's like, I'm more qualified than he is. Badges. We don't need no badges.
Definitely. And like I'll move to maybe probably more lighter topics, like about maybe choices. And if you had to choose one player whom you did not like facing against, or who gave you a tough time, who would that be?
Oh, it was always with somebody's fast. If I played in the back, anywhere you play. I mean, even in training at United, like Ryan Giggs I couldn't play against him. People always ask me, and I think I could get a tackle against Brian Robson, Eric Cantona, Mark Hughes, Roy Keane, all them. I think I can get two of them. Ryan Giggs, I couldn't. I've never played with Ronaldo, so I think he took it to a different level again. And so Ronaldo, I think, is the best player I've seen. When I watched him at United, he was incredible because he played as a right winger. His dribbling, length of the pitch, time after time. Every time he got the ball, we thought we were going to score. So, and he had Wayne Rooney and we had some fantastic players. Giggsy was we had fantastic front four really all the time. And that's where I judge, United now. We're getting up there. We've got a decent front four. We've got Mason Greenwood. For me, he's one of the best finishers I've seen. I've seen him coming through the academy. I've worked with Mason, and he is a top goal scorer. All you got to do with Mason is get him in the right place, give him the ball.
You mentioned on about Mason Greenwood, and he was performing extremely well earlier this season. And do you think like there's too much pressure on him, because like everyone is looking for a goal scorer, maybe a messiah in Greenwood, and like everyone knows that he has talent, but do you think there's too much pressure on him, or is it like if he is good enough, he's old enough?
No, he's good enough. Don't worry about it. There's no pressure. He doesn't feel the pressure, Mason. Mason is cool as can be. For me, Mason should be taking free kicks and penalties as well. He's a very good penalty taker. When he was 12, 13, 14, he was taking penalties with different feet. And which is, I can do that, but I would never do it in a game. He would do it in a game. But he also takes free kicks with different feet. Nobody does that. You've got your best foot for the free kick because he's so far out, and you've got to get it spot on. But he was taking them with his different feet, and he's like, honestly, he's such a great finisher. He doesn't. The difference with him, he knows he's got like one touch in the box, or he can touch, move it. You've got to move it to get the space. And we've got other people who are like, they'll take 1, 2, 3 touches, and the chance is gone. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just trying to get the ball under control. He knows what he's doing. He makes runs in the box as well, which is very important. Every striker, if anybody's listening, you should be making a move in the box, man. It's easy. You got to lose your defender.
And you said like you like scoring goals from left back. You scored 9 goals, like you mentioned earlier. If you were given a choice, where hypothetically, if you were given a choice to score a 90th minute winner or a 1-0 clean sheet win, which one would you take?
What?
90th minute winner or a 1-0 clean sheet, a boring win,
90th minute winner. 6-5 to us. And I scored all 5. Oh, 5 of the 6.
But why so?
We were brought up in the entertainment system. We were all the Manchester United philosophy. I don't even like saying philosophy because I don't like the word. I think people have used the philosophy thing to make out they've got their own philosophies, and football's not a philosophy. It's 11 against 11 of the football in the middle. And it's down for me. Usually, it's down to the team who works the hardest that wins a game. And if they've got quality as well, they're definitely going to win. Ask Barcelona.
Definitely. And I'll touch on current affairs, and since you are very close to United and compared to probably us here, what do you think of Ole? Because sometimes he gets criticized a lot. Sometimes they praise him a lot.
I think the problem we've got at the moment, we still need a few more players. You got to remember. If you go, how many players? We've got enough players as it is. You need top players, and you need probably 18, 19, maybe even 20. We had 2 teams when they were winning the trebles and doubles. And I think the problem is a lot of the time in the last season or 2, when we change players and resting players, we're just not as good. The ones who are coming in for the top players are not as good as they should be. And then you don't win games then if you haven't got the players aren't quite good enough. I've watched people I'm just watching the football now. Welbeck was a fantastic footballer, but he wasn't a finisher. I had a big argument with one of the coaches there. We got £16 million for him. He's as a striker, and he's not a goal scorer. He will score great goals. And I remember he went to Arsenal. He actually got a hat-trick in the Champions League or something when his first one of the Champions League games. And then within about 2 months, he was on the left wing again. Why have they done that? But that's because we probably failed him as a club. We never got him to make runs in the penalty box. And these are the key things in football for me are telling kids and teaching kids, if you're a striker, you need to make a run in the box, near post, far post, wherever. And the same for the midfielders. They need to get in the box and make runs. That's what Scholes did, Lampard. And then the other side is goal, man-for-man marking and the pressing as a team. Those are the 3 key things for me. If you get your team doing that, you've got half a chance of winning a game.
So, do you think like he's the correct man to propel maybe United to back where they
Well,
belong?
we're top of the league. You can't knock him. We're on top of the league. The biggest signing he's done was Cavani. Cavani was a. I've been saying for about 4 years, 5 years. Cavani or Lewandowski. We needed one of them to like catapult us, right up. It's like when we lost Ronaldo. It'd be like Barcelona now. They're going to lose Messi. They'll find it very difficult. Where before they used to win games easy. Then they're drawing games now when he's not playing. And so when we lost Ronaldo, it made the game a lot harder to win. We were winning games 3-4-0 every week. Boom. We knew we were going to win. And now, as soon as he left, then you go, oh, right, there's a guy who used to make 3, 4, 5, 6 chances or score 3 or 4 goals as well. Now he's gone. He's the best player in the world for me. But, you've got to work then as a team. The team thing's got to work. And Ollie's done well, he's not brought a lot of players in, but I still think we need a couple more players. He's got a lot of players. We've got like 5 or 6 top first team players who are not playing at all. They're not involved. So, they could go, and if you could replace them with 4 or 5 good, very good players who are good enough to be, in the Premiership, I think we're only going to get better. But he's a key player for me now, Cavani. He needs to be playing every game, just for people like Marcus as well, Marcus and Marshall especially, to learn off him, because his movement in the box is brilliant. He showed that against Southampton. I mean, if you look at that penalty box, it's full of players, and there was only one player moving when the shot went in a goal, and it was him. He's the only one moving out of probably 15 players in the penalty box at Southampton. Cavani twice in about 10, 15 minutes. He's the only one running, and he gets on the end of the two, the goals.
Definitely, and I personally like Cavani a lot. I think he fits like. I think a player who was at United long back was Tevez. I think they fit kind of similar. Who like
Yeah.
all
Well, I
around the
think it's
pitch.
built into them. South Americans do that a lot. They close down. They would look at, like you say, Tevez. Then you got what's his name who went,
Suarez.
Suarez of Liverpool. They should have won the league that year with him. There's no coincidence. There's no coincidence why they nearly won the league that year. It's because of him. I know you need a good team to go with it, but that pressing, Liverpool dominated the game when I was growing up and when I started playing at United, and I put it down to Ian Rush. He was one of the best I've ever seen. I actually played with Rush with Wales, so I know what he's like. And he doesn't just try to put pressure on you. He tries to win the ball off you. He thinks if he can get the ball off you, he's running straight in the goal and going to score. I mean, he scored nearly 400 goals for Liverpool.
And you said like Cavani has been instrumental, like in his. I think he's the best striker at United right now. And another player who has had a huge impact is Bruno. How much of an impact has he had on the team?
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because when he first came, I'm like watching him, I'm thinking, he's okay, he's all right. And then the thing for me is if you take all his penalties away, I don't know how many goals he scored. He scored some nice goals. He's a good ball player, but what he's doing in midfield, I was thinking that's what I would do. He probably gets around the field a bit better than me, but if you're playing in midfield, you need to have that, and that's the difference. We've not had that vision we do with Pogba, where we play balls in behind for the forwards making runs, and he's always probing in behind. He tries to make things happen, and that's the difference. When you can tell with some players they won't do that because they haven't got it in the locker. And he's one of them. He'll work very hard. The last few games, I don't think he's played that well. He's been giving the ball away quite a bit, a few sloppy things. But, for me, Pogba, I was at Carrington when Pogba was coming through at 16, 17, 18. And he was special then. And we were just really unlucky that we didn't keep him before he went to Juventus because we'd have got a lot more out of him again, I think. But what you got to think of, he's in the paper all the time. He's out for 4 months in the paper. He's in every day in the paper. The press are trying to get him out of the club. And the press are from London. And what the fans are got to do is not listen to the press. Don't let them make out that Pogba's you know, he's a bad influence and all that, because he's not. He's a good lad.
And you like on that topic of
What, you froze? They froze you out. Oh, you're back.
yeah, I think there was I think it got cut out, but yeah. So I'll just repeat the questions. Like back when you were playing, there was no social media,
Yeah,
which is it now, which is there now, and there is more scrutiny right now than probably it was there back then, in terms of every fan can access almost 24 hour, or at least 20 hours of your life. Like if you go out, they can spot you, whatever. So how much of that affects a player's performance on the pitch? Because you can be portrayed as the like the bad person or the bad influence in the group, like you said, like Pogba is in the page always, and people actually think that he is a bad person, but we do not know what he's like probably someone
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in and around him will know, or the players will know what he's like. So how much of that has influence on the player's performance?
Well, I mean, he's like you talk about social media, but that, you know, the papers are the big thing. Papers have been around when we were playing, and you got to remember the papers are run by. It's usually in London, so they probably support teams in London. So they're always. I mean, I've seen it's a couple of stories at Forlan. I know what everybody's going to say because the press hammered him, saying, "No, he's not good enough." He hadn't started a game in his first 20 games. He was on the bench all the time. And then when he came into the team, he was like, wow, he's a good player. Very good, 2 good feet. And that's the same thing. What's his name? Who's the big? I'm trying to think who he is now. Berbatov. Berbatov scores a hat trick against Liverpool, right? Overhead kick from the edge of the box was one of the goals. Then 2 weeks later, he scores 5 against Blackburn. And the press had a go at him, saying he was scoring too many goals in the same games. So hang on a minute. So can you imagine a player in any other club scoring 5 in one game? And I watched the goals, and he started a goal from a corner against around the edge of our box, ran the length of the pitch and scored. Nani rolled him in. And then could you imagine the press having a go at any other player for scoring 5 goals in a game? It'd be unbelievable. No, they had a go at him for scoring. He's scoring too many goals in the same games. He's slow. He goes to Fulham, scores a goal at Fulham. Now he's world class. That's weird, isn't it? He scores a goal for Fulham and he's world class. I don't know how many people have scored a hat trick against Liverpool, but it won't be many. And that he's world class. Yeah, the press
I
were
think
hammering
like
him all the
I think
time.
in that game
Even,
I think in
but
that game I think
it was
Gerrard
even
scored 2, and I think in that whole season Gerrard scored 2, I guess. I think he got a brace when Berbatov scored a hat trick.
yeah. The problem is though, when the press is saying that, you've got people who watch, you know, the commentators, right, who do match of the day. They'll be watching the press and they'll be having a go at him. They'd be like, yeah, he's not scoring enough goals, and you're like thinking, no, you're listening to the press, and but the punters are listening, the fans are listening to this, and they start believing it that he can't run, he's not fast. I've seen him outrun Ashley Cole, and it's with the ball at his feet. Pogba did it the other week against, who is it? One of the midfielders. He's running away with the ball. He's running away from the guy, and he's also carrying the ball as well. But the press, and my biggest thing now, I'm starting to not like watching football live because the commentary is so biased. I mean, even Gary Neville, I think Gaz has turned into a Liverpudlian. I mean, the Burnley game the other day was scary when he said he couldn't, that Luke Shaw didn't get the ball. I'm like, no, he's botched it 3 times, and he's got his I don't know, his heel has caught the ball, but he's just followed through a little. But you can't help that because you're diving into a tackle. And you can usually tell when somebody's trying to be naughty and they keep the leg dead straight to try and hurt the lad. And he didn't do that. for me, it was a good tackle. He goes up the other end. And then Brady used to be at United. You don't want to see him sent off because he's an ex-United player, but it was a red card offence. Then that gets pulled back. Then you got Harry Kane. Harry scores a fantastic goal with his head. As you could see his reaction, he was fuming. And you could have blamed the defender for backing into him, because he's not getting the ball, the defender. He's going back. He's in the wrong place. And then they give and I'm like, the VAR in getting football now is they need to take referees off it. In fact, they probably need to get the rugby referees to referee the matches, because they're so incompetent. It's scary. It's so scary that they can watch a decision from every angle and still get it wrong. What does that tell you about them when they're doing it live on the football pitch? Jesus.
I think without VAR, they were making lesser mistake than with VAR.
What was that? So you've gone again.
Without VAR, I think they were making lesser mistake than with VAR, because they're getting...
No, you need VAR so the people can see.
No, VAR is good.
What you got to know, right? Every referee supports a football team. So, I mean, most of them, the top 4 teams are going to get, they're not going to get as much as the other teams, because, you know, they're, if you don't support the teams, you always like the underdog. Everybody loves an underdog. It's like the FA Cup is so great. But, you know, there's referees refereeing games. They support Leeds United, they support Liverpool, and they're refereeing a Man United game. So they're going to lean. If they know they can... I saw one the other week. I shouldn't mention it. It was on Sky with Gary Neville. Henry, it was when it was very close with Liverpool, United and Arsenal. And Henry was offside. You could see he was a mile offside. And he said, yeah, I can say it now. You know, I was offside. But I looked on the way back, the linesman running back, I know he's a Leeds United fan. I've been told by another referee that he supports Leeds, and it was his decision that left him go through and score. And he was miles offside. So he's thinking, shall I let Arsenal win the league, or shall I let Man United win the league? And he's a Leeds fan. That shouldn't be, you know, that's conflict of interest, and he shouldn't have that decision. That's why VAR needs to come in, so that doesn't happen ever again. Like the handball with Henry against Northern Ireland, or was it the Republic of Ireland? You know, those things, and they need to change some of the rules back, like the handball rule, the offside rule, and you need to have a space. If the forward's attacking, leave the space in between so we can see if there's a space between the striker and the defender, you know, and then there's the goalkeeper, he's offside. Not the other way, that his finger's offside or his elbow. I mean, that's crazy. That's stupid. Only referees could bring up that stupid idea. How thick can you be? You've got to go back to the old way, where there's actually space between, so you can go straight to the VAR and go bump, freeze frame. As it leaves his foot, there's a gap between them. He's offside. Yeah, how easy is that? You don't have to watch it 50 times and go, let's draw some lines on it. Let's draw a few lines and see if his left finger is or something's offside. It's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking.
Definitely. And I'll ask you last few questions before we wrap it up, because I don't want to take much more of your time. And the first one is, since we are talking about referees and decisions which have gone maybe probably the other way, which was the worst decision that went against you, or wrong decision during your playing career?
A decision that went against us?
Yeah, a wrong decision.
They had good referees in them days. They weren't, to be fair, there's always going to be something in them days. But like I say, you've got referees watching VAR and they get things wrong now. You know, watching it from every angle and still getting it wrong. But there was a shot. In fact, it was a big game, Notts Forest at Old Trafford, and they weren't sure if it was over the line or not. But obviously I wasn't in a position to see it, so I still don't know whether it was. But I think that was the season where we lost the league to Leeds. But you know, those kind of things, you need the VAR. It can't be seen by the naked eye. That's why VAR is a must. I'm watching the referees doing it. They definitely need it because they can't referee without it. Jesus. They can't referee with it.
Definitely. So, like, I have last three questions, and the first of the three is like, if you had to choose the highest point of your career, which will be difficult, one single moment, which one would that be?
Barcelona. We beat
Why?
Barcelona in the Cup Winners' Cup final. Then after, I mean, the Premier League was a high point, but it wasn't. It was weird because it was more relief. I'd been there a long time at United, 13 years, and I'd come right through the ranks from 14 years old, and it was like it was getting on, it was going on. When we're going to win the league, and it was just relief. And it was typical. I was sat at home watching the telly when we won it. We didn't win it on the pitch, actually, or on the pitch. The cup, I think the cup games are great because it's finished there, and then you get the trophy, everything sorted. So the Cup Winners' Cup against Barcelona.
Definitely. And like the second last is like, like if you had to give a piece of advice to a young player just starting out, what would that be?
Don't be a referee. No. I mean, for me as a footballer, you've got to work really hard. You only get out of football what you put into it. Like I say, I've played in a top team, and I had to work so hard to stay at that club. Because you've got top players. You're fighting with top players for your position all the time. So you've got to work very, very hard. And then those are the key things. If you're a player, if you're a forward, make sure you're making runs in the box. One touch finish around the box. You've got to be looking to score goals. Don't be overplaying. If you're a defender, get goal side and try not to get caught. You've got to drop off as well. Drop off at times and give yourself a bit of space when you're playing somebody who's faster than you. But
so
get
like
out of it what you put into it.
Definitely. So like we'll wrap it up with I think the question of the hour, and who'll win the game tonight, Liverpool or United?
What do I think your score is?
Yeah,
it's a tricky one. I actually went on Liverpool TV the other day, and to give you the scenarios, if Pogba, Matic are playing, I think we'll win. And obviously Cavani and if you've got Greenwood, I've said this year, if you're to play Greenwood up front alongside Cavani all year, we'll win the league. I said that at the start of the season, and we've not done that yet. But he's that clever, Mason. He gets himself into that position. He comes off the wing. I mean, he's 18 goals from right wing when you're 18. That's scary football, that is. He's a special talent. I've gone 2-1, but I'll take a draw if Pogba or Matic aren't playing. I think they're key tonight. They've got to run that midfield. They're better than their midfielders. Henderson and Wijnaldum, we've got a better midfield than them. So they just got to make sure they outplay him and outwork him, because they're going to work hard. You can guarantee that. Unless he's playing centre back.
Definitely. Definitely. And you like
problems. It's the best
on that note, Clayton, thank you so much for joining me, and I wish you all the best for your endeavors and hope to talk to you again soon. Till then, take care, stay safe. Bye.
No problem.